Hi, welcome to the fiscal year 21-22 Budget at a Glance video. My name is Pak Lin and I'm the Administrative Services Director for the town of Colma. In this video, I will be providing you an overview of the town's fiscal year 21-22 operating and capital budget. The presentation used in this video was used during the budget adoption on the June 9, 2021 regular City Council meeting. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected town operations in many ways. The operational impact of the pandemic is summarized in the City Manager's message video, which is linked in the description below. This slide captures the main financial impact, including a reduction in general fund revenues by $1.8 million for 2.5 months of business closure due to the shelter-in-place order. In May 2020, the town expected the revenue forecast for fiscal year 2021 to be $968,000 less in sales tax and $3.2 million less in carbon tax revenues when compared to the fiscal year 1920 budget. As part of the budget balancing strategy, the City Council approved the use of unassigned general fund reserve in fiscal year 1920 and fiscal year 2021 to bridge this operating and fund deficit. Additionally, operating budget for fiscal year 2021 was significantly reduced with hiring freezes, deferred capital purchases and maintenance, limited the use of contracted services, contributed less to the 115 trusts, and contributed none to the fleet replacement allocation. The town participates in 115 trust pools to offset future unfunded liabilities from pension and other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB or OPEB. This line chart shows graphically the general fund revenues from fiscal year 17-18 through fiscal year 21-22. The blue line represents budget and the orange represents actual. The actual for fiscal year 2021 actually includes some projection as this chart was completed in May of 2021. So the $15.3 million here represents actual receipt through May of 2021 and a projection for the month of June. Similarly, 21-22 for both actual and budget are projections. Looking at the orange line in comparison to the blue, you may notice that the orange line trends above the budget in fiscal year 17-18 and fiscal year 18-19. This is the typical revenue trend because historically the town's revenue budget is conservative. Unlike private companies, municipalities operate on a revenue-constrained environment. The town cannot generate revenues easily to offset spending. By allocating spending plans based on a conservative revenue projection, the town was able to grow its reserve funds in the last several years. In fiscal year 1920, the town has similar story for general fund revenues through February of 2020, where actual revenues were trending better than budgeted. However, when March 17 came around and local businesses were closed for 2.5 months because of the COVID pandemic, the town showed a $2.2 million reduction in actual revenues when compared to the budget. As shown in the table, sales tax reduced from $12.1 million in fiscal year 18-19 to $10.5 in 1920, and for card room, it went down to 3.3 in fiscal year 1920. The town expected the reduction in revenues as a result of the shelter-in-place order to continue into fiscal year 2021 and projected to receive a total of $13.2 million in general fund revenues. The good news is that by March 2021, it was clear that the town's actual revenues will exceed the budget because of two main factors. The first factor is the town received an unexpected windfall from sales tax revenues as a result of the Wayfair decision. The decision required online platforms like Wayfair to collect, report, and pay corresponding states its fair share of sales tax from all online purchases. The second factor is from creative solutions to offer cardroom services while complying with state and county social distancing and masking requirements. With the reopening plan in California scheduled for June 15, 2021, the town expects revenue for fiscal year 21-22 to be close to the level of fiscal year 19-20's budget at $17.5 million as the projected total for fiscal year 21-22. The town will continue to closely monitor the pandemic and its impact on the town's revenue sources in the next 6 months of fiscal year 21-22. Before going into the meat of the budget, the spending plan, let's take a look at the budgeting process. While budgeting is a year-round process where budget to actuals are reviewed monthly, the trigger of the budget process is the mid-year budget review. Consider this timeline as stepping stones. Each subsequent meeting is built on the prior budget meeting, with March 10th marking the start of the budget development process. The mid-year review is a good metric to understand the financial health of the town. By January, the town would have received the first installment of property tax, 5 months of cardroom tax revenues, and 5 installments of sales and use tax revenues. Because of the delay in receipt of major revenue sources, most municipalities use mid-year as the benchmark for the new year's budget development. The next step in the budget development is preparation for the preliminary budget. For fiscal year 21-22, that included the review and update of the unfunded liabilities. From the April 14th meeting, City Council provided direction to fund pension and OPEB 115 trusts at 100% of the actuarial calculation and to have it incorporated in the preliminary budget that was presented on April 28th. The goal of the April 28th meeting and the May 12th meeting were to provide the City Council and the public staff's initial assessment of the financial health and the spending plan for the new year, and to confirm City Council's and the community's priorities and concerns for the new fiscal year. Feedbacks from the April 28th and the May 12th Council meetings are then incorporated in the proposed budget presented on May 26th, where final feedbacks are received and to be incorporated in the final proposed budget to be adopted on June 9th. The next 5 slides shows the final proposed budget adopted on June 9th. Overall, the town projects to receive $19.2 million in revenue. Total operating and capital budget is at $20.9 million, with $1.1 million in the capital program and $19.8 million in the operating expenditures. General fund operating deficit is at $450,000, and after transfers to debt, sewer, and capital program, the fund deficit is at $1.5 million. In the April 28th Council meeting, the City Council approved the use of unassigned general fund reserve to fund the fiscal year 21-22 general fund operation and transfers. With California scheduled to reopen on June 15, 2021, the town was expecting the operational demands to return to pre-pandemic level, but was uncertain on the revenue recovery. As most businesses return to full capacity, revenues recovery rates may increase, reducing the need to use the entire $1.5 million of unassigned general fund reserve. The use of the reserves gives the town some flexibility to tailor operational needs to actual demands of the community and to respond to the revenue recovery rates. Looking at the town-wide revenues, this chart looks very similar to the line chart in the previous slide. The prior revenue slide focused on general fund, and this is for all town funds. The key takeaway here are total revenues for 21-22 is projected at $19.2 million. The combine of the sales tax in blue and card room tax in green represents 80% of total revenues for all funds for each of the fiscal year. Amongst the major categories, card room tax and sales tax revenues were most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and fiscal year 21-22 assumes some recovery in card room and sales tax revenues, but not recovered to the pre-pandemic level of the 18-19 actuals. As for the operating capital expenditure, the total budget for fiscal year 21-22 is $20.9 million. This includes $1.1 million in capital, $7.9 million in non-personnel, and $11.9 million in personnel costs. The combination of the personnel and non-personnel is $19.8 million. And comparing this to the amount in fiscal year 2021 estimated actual, here are the changes. The town assumed operations will be restored to full capacity equal to pre-pandemic level. In fiscal year 21-22, the assumption includes filling all vacancies, increasing contributions to 115 trusts, restoring contingency budget, reinstating contribution to fleet replacement, and catching up on minor repairs and maintenance items. The fiscal year 21-22 budget also includes CPI increases such as 5% in medical costs and other benefits, 26% in general liability and workers' comp insurance premium due to the insurance market, and 3 to 5% in contract services. Lastly, the budget included limited time budget items such as onboarding costs for vacant PD officer positions and one-time consultation for economic and revenue initiatives that were identified in the 2020-2022 strategic plan. The strategic plan can be found on the town's website under the City Manager City Clerk Department page. In the capital program, the table shows a list of active projects, their project status, unspent carryover project budget, new budget requests, and the capital program costs for fiscal year 21-22. Unlike the operating budget, the capital budget does not reset to zero on July 1st of every year. The project budget carries over until the project is completed and the City Council has authorized release of the unspent funding. This table shows the funding source. The difference between the total funding source of $866,000 and this total project request of $846,000 is the $20,000 REAP grant, which is a reimbursement grant and is already accounted for in the carryover portion of the general plan update. While this capital program is just a snapshot for fiscal year 21-22, the town anticipates the capital program to change once more information is available on these two projects here. The next item in the overall budget is the interfund transfers. The way to read this table is to match the negative and the positive number that are corresponding to each other. And it is worth noting that transfers in are in positive and transfers out are in negative. For example, General Fund 11 is transferring out $3 million to the General Fund Reserve. The General Fund is also transferring out $297,000 to debt, $525,000 to Capital Fund, $7,000 to Street Capital Fund, and $240,000 to the sewer operation. General Fund, Fund 11, supports debt service, sewer operations, and capital program. Additionally, the town reserves policy requires that the budget stabilization reserve to be funded at 100% of the prior year's budgeted expenditure. So what does this mean for total general fund reserve? Total general fund reserve, excluding 115 trusts, will reduce by $1.5 million in fiscal year 21-22. The reduction of $4.6 million in the unassigned reserve includes the $3 million transfer to the budget stabilization reserve. While this transfer is significant, consider this more as moving money from one envelope to another. The 115 trust balances are included in this table for comparison purposes to the annually audited financial statements. Previously, the OPEB and Pension 115 trusts were reported separately from the general fund in the audited statements. With new GASB rules, they were consolidated in the fiscal year 1920 audited reports. As for GANN limit, the takeaway is that the total proceeds of tax of $16.4 million is less than the appropriation limit for fiscal year 21-22 of $57.3 million, which means the town is in compliance with the GANN limit. This was the last slide in the June 9th City Council meeting. The proposed budget was adopted with no modification. With that, this concludes the Budget at a Glance video. Please don't forget to check out the video on the City Manager's message and navigating through the digital budget. The City Manager's message summarizes the town's challenges and achievements in fiscal year 2021 and the town's goal for fiscal year 21-22. The video on navigating through the digital budget shows step-by-step directions on where to click and how to view the town's fiscal year 21-22 digital budget on your browser or smart devices. The link to the videos and the digital budget are in the description below. Thank you for your interest in the budget for the town of Colma.